Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jordan and today I am super excited because I'm doing a video that I'm excited about and also nervous about because it's a discussion video. It's going to be a little bit more casual than most of my other videos, and basically we're just going to talk about romance and how it's depicted in young adult fiction. And I'm going to talk about the good, I'm going to talk about the bad, I'm going to talk about the ugly. We're going to go and kind of do a deep dive, and I'm really of two minds about romance and YA, so we're just going to explore it today, and hopefully it's going to be a start of a discussion because I'd love to hear what you guys think about it and also what other booktubers and YouTubers think about how romance is depicted in young adult fiction. So I am really excited to jump into this video, but before we do that, this video is sponsored by Amino Apps. That's right, your girl got a sponsorship. And I am super excited about the sponsorship because Amino is so much fun. It's an app with literally millions of communities where people with different interests and passions can connect through fandoms and communities. There are so many like-minded people out there who share the same passions and interests, and this is such a great way to connect with those people and interact with them. And of course, my favorite Amino is the books and writing Amino because that's where I have found so many people who share the same passion that I have for the written word and for storytelling. There are so many fun ways to connect with people on this Amino, but one of my favorites is the polls, where you can vote on your favorite ship or your favorite character or book and share your opinion, but also you get to see what other people are saying about those books, character ships, etc. And I just find that to be super fun. Speaking of other people's opinions though, there are a ton of book reviews on the app, and as a reviewer myself, I love to see what other people are saying. On top of that, there are a ton of amazing artists on the app who create beautiful fan art as well as bookmarks, which are absolutely stunning, and I just love it as a place to get inspired. I also think you might like the Amino YA fanatics if you enjoy reading young adult fiction, so that's another one to check out for sure. All of that said, I also have a super special announcement. I have just released a character profile for one of my original characters that will show up in the new serial that I am plotting. So, you know, there's still a long ways to go with that character. I'm sure that she will evolve, but she is the most solid character that I have from that serial so far. I'm really excited about this character, but I need your help because she doesn't have a name yet, and of course she needs one. So I'm gonna do a naming contest, and then on August 11th, I'm gonna go through all of the names that I've received on the app, and I'm going to choose my top 4 favorite names, and then on YouTube I'm going to share a poll with the 4 names, and whichever name gets the most votes, that will be the name that appears in the serial. And on top of that, you win a 15-minute one-on-one video call with me where we can chat about whatever you like. So to enter, all you need to do is click the link in the description or on the pinned YouTube comment and download the app for free on iOS or Android, or you can just search it in your app store. Once you're on Amino, search books and writing to join, and then participate using the hashtag NameJordansOC, and that's it. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. Okay, romance. I have so many thoughts about how romance is portrayed in YA, and it turns out you guys do too. I posted on Twitter yesterday seeing what you guys thought about romance and how it's portrayed in YA, some of your favorite tropes, some things that you hate, and you guys went off. There were so many amazing comments and people talking about what they liked, what they didn't like, so thank you for chatting about that. So today I just kind of wanted to explore my feelings on romance in YA and continue this discussion because, as I said, I'm kind of two minds about it. I think there's a big split between how people feel, and I think that's important to look at. There are a ton of people who enjoy romance in YA, which I absolutely do too sometimes, and I'll dive into my feelings a bit later, but I think people really enjoy it because there is so much magic about first loves and feeling romance and emotion as a teenager when things are so black and white and you're living life so passionately with feelings that run so deep. And so reading about young adult romance can be really magical. It can be like reliving those feelings of your own first love all over again, or it can be gooey and delicious and total wish fulfillment, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think a lot of people are also burnt out from romance in YA, or feel that oftentimes it's shoved in there or not warranted or distracting from an otherwise interesting story, which is also legitimate, and I think that those feelings are important to explore as well. So today we're going to kind of talk about both the good and the bad and my feelings on romance, and what I'm hoping is that this sparks a little bit of a discussion about just romance and how it's portrayed in general, but specifically in YA, because I'd love to hear what other people are saying about it. I've also found that there are a lot of romance tropes that are very divisive, because some people absolutely adore them and other people can't stand them, and I think that's more the case with romance than with any other type of trope. And I think that that's because it's something so intimate and people either really connect with specific things because of personal life experiences and their own preferences, while other people completely don't connect with that and find it annoying or even repulsive. But to start out, I'm going to name a few that are pretty much unanimously hated amongst like everyone that I've talked to. And I think number one would have to be the cheating, but it's okay because she's mean. And I specifically hate this trope a lot because I don't think cheating is ever okay, no matter how mean the other character is, no matter how much they love the protagonist and not the other character. That person is a jerk for not just breaking up with the person that they're in a relationship with while they're side-wheeling another character. Like, it's just so wrong to me. And I think Anna and the French Kiss, that is why I hated that book so freaking much, is because how can I root for a relationship when the love interest is in a relationship with someone else? That just drove me nuts, and I don't understand why that book was such a huge success. But anyways, that is something that I can never get behind, and I think a lot of people are with me on that for the most part. Another one that people absolutely hate is the miscommunication for no reason. And this is miscommunication that of course ends in a breakup that lasts about an act, if that, like maybe even less than that, and then they're back together, and it just served absolutely no purpose. They just withheld information for no reason, and that drives me absolutely up the wall, as I'm sure it does with a lot of other people. But that being said, I actually enjoy miscommunication if it's done in a specific way. For example, there is a Chinese drama that I'm watching right now called A Love So Beautiful, and oftentimes the characters in that story miscommunicate and shenanigans happen, but it's always with the best intentions that they're acting. So for me, miscommunication can be done well, but it has to be with good intentions rather than just withholding information for no reason that'll end up hurting your partner. That's just a jerk move. Another one is the jerk with a sad backstory that is used as an excuse for their crappy behavior towards their partner. And for me, that is super problematic. And this is common both in contemporaries and in romantic subplots in sci-fi, fantasy, you know, dystopian action adventure, whatever. It's common throughout so many different genres and types of narratives. I just don't see that as romantic. But of course, I did when I was 14, which I think is another interesting point. I think the tastes of 13, 14-year-olds, which is the young spectrum of YA, versus the tastes of 17, 18-year-olds, which is on the older end, is completely different. So to just paint YA with a broad stroke as, you know, this one thing, like, you change so much. That is, I think, the age range where you develop the most as a person and learn about relationships and socialization and becoming an adult. So to say that one type of romance will appeal to a 13-year-old the way that it appeals to an 18-year-old is a bit naive, and oftentimes that's not the case for obvious reasons. And I think what tends to happen is these super dramatic, over-the-top, and sometimes dysfunctional and problematic relationships that we see in YA, the younger end of the spectrum tends to gravitate towards that because it's easy to see that as romantic when someone is so passionately obsessed with you. Especially because at that point most people haven't had romances and haven't been in love and don't see how that's unhealthy. And while I think these contribute to the kind of burnout that people are feeling towards romance in YA, I don't think that these are the main problems. I think they're just common tropes that people are sick and tired of seeing. I think the main problems are much more macro. I think a lot of people's frustration comes from books that pretend to be one thing and end up being something entirely different. Oftentimes, I'll buy a sci-fi or a dystopian or a fantasy and expect it to be action-packed, full of adventure and that kind of story, and it ends up just being another love triangle or romance story where the subplot becomes the main plot really fast and everything else gets pushed to the side. And I think that those frustrations are completely valid because your expectations aren't being met. And this is the fault of the marketers of the book, which is the publishers, for not really depicting what the book is actually about, which then leads to reader frustration. That was a huge issue that I had with Throne of Glass, which was marketed as this action-packed fantasy story with an assassin as the protagonist, and it ended up being more about her relationship with the other characters and a budding romance. And perhaps I would have enjoyed the book much more had I not had these expectations going in, which is not the fault of the author, but is a huge issue with the publishing industry. That's not to say that authors are off the hook though, because I think another huge problem is that romance is expected in all of these stories, and I think that romance can be a great tool to explore character and human interactions and really develop characters through relationships with each other. I think that it can be absolutely beautiful. But when it's treated as this necessary thing, even with characters that have no chemistry, it can be really dull and feel really forced, which is a total turnoff. And I think that we've all felt that in stories where there is no chemistry between the male lead and the female lead, and yet they're forced together regardless, just because they're the leads. And that brings me to something else that is pretty much unanimously hated, especially as you grow older and older, and that is insta-love. I think insta-love can be done well. With Romeo and Juliet, it's this story of passion, but I think that there's a lot that's going on politically outside of the romance that almost makes it more exciting and dramatic. And I think that there are very few situations where insta-love is something that people can root for, because it's interesting seeing relationships build. For me personally, I love the will they won't they of building a relationship over the course of a story and having this tension of will they get together, won't they get together, growing from enemies to friends to finally a relationship, or just friends to a relationship, but seeing the build, because that's what I get excited about. That's the shipping part. But of course, I love seeing relationships too. When they do finally get together, I love seeing characters that build each other up, but also struggle with real issues and real problems that couples face. It doesn't always have to be so dramatic and over the top that oftentimes gets depicted as these really unhealthy relationships, because these characters are always fighting or there's always drama, and that also becomes hard to root for. A lot of people on my Twitter were saying that they really hated that once the characters got together, the relationship instantly became this unhealthy dynamic of drama and fighting. And it's so nice seeing characters that are in a relationship and respect the other person and grow together, because that's so vital to any relationship, whether it be a friendship or a family or of course a romance. So that brings me to things that I kind of enjoy in romance and YA. And again, I'd like to pinpoint the fact that you are growing so much at this age, and I think that it's a beautiful way of depicting growth through love and human connection and character development through interaction, which is one of my favorite ways to see character development. So seeing stories that really take advantage of that are so nice. I think a great example of a hate to love relationship done well is in Anne of Green Gables. Because while they start out hating each other, it's just because they're so similar that they often butt heads, her and Gilbert. And instead of actually just being abusive and awful to each other, they just bicker and don't get along. And it stems from a place of stubbornness, but their relationship is beautiful to watch because as they grow up and mature, they realize that that is the root of a lot of their conflicts, is that they are in fact so similar and that some of those characteristics can actually complement each other very well. It turns out when you're stubborn, you can be determined, and that determination can help lift up the other person. So there's this really beautiful dynamic between the two of them, which is what I love to see in a hate to love relationship. What I can't stand in a hate to love relationship is when they hate each other so much that they can't stand being around each other, and yet somehow we're supposed to ship that and make those abusive, horrible conflicts seem like passion and interest, and it generally turns from hate to love like that, and I cannot get behind that. Another thing that I personally love is the will they, won't they, and the really long build up to a relationship, because I love shipping people and I love watching those hints of, you know, passion and those little moments and hoping that one day they'll realize how perfect they are for each other. But something that can go along with that is queerbaiting, which I don't necessarily feel qualified to talk about extensively, though I will link a video that was done by Sarah Zed, who I think explained the topic really well. And it's a huge issue when characters of the same gender are hinted at potentially being in a relationship, but the intention of the author or the storytellers is to never have those two characters end up together. So it's baiting people in the LGBTQ+ community who are really looking for a relationship to root for and get behind that is representative of their own relationships and feelings, and then it's just toying with them or playing with them. So it's something to be aware of and to be careful of. And I feel like there are also a lot of people who don't like the will they, won't they relationships and who just want them to get together because sometimes they're extended too long and it's a fine balance before it gets annoying and like, why aren't these two characters just getting together when clearly they both like each other? It depends on how it's executed, and I think that that is true for any trope, but I think it's especially true for romantic tropes because tastes vary so widely. Each trope and structure and tendency can mean different things if played with in even small, tiny ways to different people. But I think that romance is a beautiful thing to explore and an important one, even if it's not taken seriously. I love a good wish fulfillment story. I am watching Meteor Garden right now, which is another Chinese drama on Netflix, and I absolutely am living for it even though it's kind of trash. I love it because it is pure wish fulfillment, and that is totally fine. I love reading romance books, especially in the summer because I'm totally in the mood, and just feeling the feels. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think that it's important for books that are wish fulfillment to not pretend to be something else, because that's when you get people who are frustrated and disappointed and all of these other things. Another thing that I'd like to talk about is objectification in young adult fiction especially, but just in general, because I have very strong feelings on this subject. So I think obviously physical attraction in a romance is absolutely necessary, and I love a good physical description, especially in the more intimate moments when these characters are finally really connecting. But the tone of the relationship shifts from love to lust very quickly if the entire romance is based on lust and feelings of physical attraction rather than emotional or mental attraction. I also think, and this is where people are going to disagree with me, that objectification is okay to a certain extent. For example, in video games, I absolutely hate that oftentimes women are the only ones who are objectified, because what about us female people? If you're gonna objectify the women, I want to see some nearly naked dudes too, okay? So I think that if it's done more equally, then I personally have no problem with it. If everyone's getting a slice of human body meat, it's fine. But that being said, I think it's also important to note that when there is a protagonist who is only attracted to one gender, and then they start describing everyone's physicalities, that's when it can get a little bit confusing and it can start to become queerbaiting, so it's this really fine line to tread. But what I hate is when there is multiple perspectives in a YA novel. There's male characters and female characters told from different POVs, and I find that this is more of an issue with female authors, where a lot of the times there is objectification of one gender and not the other, even though there are different perspectives of people who are attracted to each other. Like, I feel like women are much more cautious to write about boobs and butts and all the female parts than they are to objectify males. And I think that's true with male authors too, to an extent, but I think that just because of all the movements that are going on, female objectification has gone way down, whereas male objectification has remained relatively the same. I think that in YA especially, there is way more male objectification than there is female objectification, and I don't think anyone is talking about it, which I personally find to be a bit of an issue, because, as I said, I'm all for equal objectification, but when it's just men being treated like slabs of meat and women are the only ones allowed to be loved for their personality only, that's when I have an issue with it. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because I feel like the objectification thing is very divisive and I feel like people have very strong feelings about it. So yeah, I don't really have a point that I'm trying to argue with this. I more just wanted to have a discussion and open the door to talking about different tropes in YA, why they exist, are they damaging, are they problematic, are they okay, and just wish fulfillment. I don't know. I would just kind of love to chat about it with you guys. But I guess I'm just gonna wrap it up with a few of my thoughts. I would personally love to see more healthy depictions of romances where you get characters who support each other and support each other's dreams and ambitions and feelings, and there's a healthy, open communication. And of course, there's allowed to be conflict too. Couples fight, people grow from each other and their mistakes, and I think that that is totally fine and part of any healthy relationship. But I would just love to see an overall shift towards more accurate and healthy depictions of romances, unless there is a story that is specifically wish fulfillment, because to me that is just as fantasy as an actual high fantasy novel. It's a different world, different rules exist, so anything sort of rom-com-y, that is completely fine as long as that is sort of the context of the book. If it's masquerading as some epic fantasy sci-fi dystopian thing and then ends up just being another cliche romance, that's when you get people who are very frustrated. I would also love to see insta-love just die in a hole, but that's my personal thoughts, as well as some of the problematic tropes that I discussed earlier. But I don't know. I just kind of want to pass the question off to you as the great Philly D would. What are your thoughts on romance in YA? Are you burnt out? Do you love it? What are some of your favorite romances? What are some of your least favorite romances? And if there are any YouTubers or booktubers who are watching this, I would love to hear your thoughts in a video about what you feel about romance and how it's depicted in YA, because I think that it's really interesting and important to talk about because it's such a huge fundamental part of most people's lives, and these relationships are kind of role models or what people aspire to, especially younger people, which is why I think things like Twilight were so huge with such a young audience. So yeah, I'm passing this discussion off to you. I would love to hear your thoughts, and I guess that's it. So I'm sorry if this video left you with more questions than answered. I just kind of wanted to explore my feelings, and I wanted to see where you guys are at too. If you did enjoy it though, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Most of my content is a lot more organized than this, but I just really wanted to explore this today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. We get it, abs are great. I love me a good pair of abs. It's not a pair of abs, I don't know, a good set of abs.